Out of the many facets that make this photograph arresting to the eye, one of the most startling is its use of the rule of thirds. The tree branches in the upper right third of the shot might be dead, but lit against the dark, forbidding mountain across from it receding in the upper left third, it looks singularly noble. So this is the rule of thirds. Divide the screen into thirds both horizontally and vertically. Imagine a tic-tac-toe board on the screen. Points of focus should fall on the lines. For extra appeal, make the main point of focus fall on an intersection of the lines. When we talk about the rule of thirds, we're trying to come up with a formula that keeps our gaze from being inattentive. To place the object of our interest exactly in the middle of our frame lulls the mind like anything that is perfectly aligned. Such numbing tranquility is a pitfall we want to avoid. Our vision, probably as an evolutionary tool for survival, responds to incongruity. Anything a little bit off or out of kilter alerts our eye. Whereas if it's smack in the center, it's already probably too late. I was in Alaska last summer walking up a road, keeping my eyes open for wildlife ahead of me. But it was the grizzly bear off to the side of the road, scratching his back in the upper third, that quickly caught my gaze. To keep our mind engaged in a movie, we want to promote active anticipation, so we don't want to get stuck in the middle of the frame. We want to not only look at, we want to look forward. We don't call it a moving picture for nothing. In this scene out of a horror movie, in the upper left third, we anticipate the villain. In the upper right third, we anticipate the escape. So it's nothing but a composed frame of action. So to reiterate, rule of thirds, divide the height and width equally into 3 sections. Place the center of interest on or near one of the stars. On or near the inside horizontal third lines are also a good guide for placing the horizon line, as we see in this picture here. The image is divided into thirds horizontally and vertically. When we have people talking and we want a match cut, usually it's good if we have a person on the left talking in the upper third with the eye line to match with somebody on the right upper third eye line. So we want to try to place our subject in one of these 4 circles. Another way of looking at this divided frame is to remind yourself to avoid placing your main object of interest in the center of the middle row of squares, or to the outer edges of the 2 side rows of squares. The former mistake, featuring your main object in the center of the frame, reduces the contrast with the background and flattens your picture. The latter mistake, pushing your object to the sides of the frame, imagine them on the sidewalks in front of these houses, features more of the foreground or the background, making it hard to pay attention to what you want the audience to see. Here, using the rule of thirds, we found that our subject is in the right place to give us depth to the shot. And that's what we want in a movie. We don't want it to be flat. We want to get any excuse we can find to add depth. So I'm going to scroll through a number of shots here showing really good examples of the use of rule of thirds. I put this statue here because if you're ever going to shoot statues, or actors who are seemingly like a statue, you need to get a little angle on them so we just don't get the back of their head. Here's a nice balance between fire and ocean. Here's a classic vacation scene, but well done. And here's a wonderful use of thirds where we get her upper part and her lower part both giving us a diagonal in the rule of thirds so that it's a nice spread across the frame. And here's something you want to alert us to. We think, okay, I can't put something in the center of the frame. Here's a face right in the middle. But the point is, we always use eyes as a point of interest. So here, his eyes take up the third points in the frame. Unlike this gentleman, who has way too much headroom, this gentleman has the right amount of headroom. And he also uses rule of thirds with his eyes, where he doesn't. Here, this is a good example of a use of rule of thirds where she's looking at us. We can see the background. See how it gives depth to the photo, that she doesn't dominate the whole picture but allows the mountains in the background to take place. So they've done studies, and I don't need to belabor these things, but if you want to get into the stats and you looked at that picture, they've done polls, and they found that 41% of the people looked in the obvious place. But here, this is a nice use of rule of thirds, as well as that. Look at the balance between the bench and the tower. And here, simply the tree and the farm. If we look at movies, almost any movie you'll see, the cinematographer obeys the rule of thirds. Going back here to Metropolis, we can see an excellent use of rule of thirds here. And if we go and are looking at anything by Hitchcock, obviously here, the rule of thirds in the rear window is obvious. It's Grace Kelly and Stewart, each occupying focus as they look out the window. And here with Bergman's persona, here's a very aesthetically balanced and yet startling use of the rule of thirds between Liv Ullmann and her partner. And here, we'll look at Chinatown, for instance. Chinatown, of course, we've got Nicholson here and his rule of thirds being observed. But look at what he's doing. He's looking over his shoulder backwards. So we anticipate that what he's looking at will come from that other third of the frame. And here, in bed, the balance of the frame, again, rule of thirds. And if you look at a recent Oscar award winning movie, The King's Speech, look at how this whole frame is balanced with the rule of thirds here. So that he's sitting and he's talking to us, but look at the depth we get in the background because he's observing the rule of thirds. Here, Morgan Freeman looking off to the left, giving us the direction of the action off to the left so that we anticipate who he's waiting for. Here, again, anticipation is the center of this scene. And if we look at our Sherlock, we can always have this emblematic scene where he's talking, and in the background we have the city, the London setting, and he's, of course, prominent, but there's depth because of the city behind him. And of course, even if he's, racking focus so that the background is blurred, we still get depth. Here is a good example of anticipating with the rule of thirds. She's obviously looking up at the dark stairway, anticipating, and that third where the dark stairway is, and that third where we imagine her eye lines is a nice way of us prefiguring what's going to happen. And of course, here's a nice one, nice shot going down a tunnel. The rule of thirds draws us to the left, as does this shot where the upper right third we are drawn to, but we're the one at the lower third that she's coming towards. Any classic movie, modern or old, is going to obey the rule of thirds. Here in oops, my phone. I'm going to have to shut this off because you can't record these things without somebody calling you. Anyway, excuse me for that. In this shot from Tarantino's Pulp Fiction, we have a classic scene, but look at how classic the rule of thirds here is. Both killers are occupying their thirds. And here, the suspicious glance, balanced by the light in the upper third, not only gives us a balance, but draws anticipatory feelings to the right of the frame. And even when we do fights and action scenes in the movies, here we see that, in this fight, she is on the upper right third and he's on the lower right third, and giving us a focal point, a balance, and yet there's a move to the action. So when we're looking at faces like this, where the eye line is occupying the rule of thirds, remember that in movies, some of our most arresting images have come in from eye lines like this. This is from The Stranger. And of course, when it comes to horror movies, this is the kind of eye line that we're looking forward to.